Good afternoon, everybody. And on behalf of Centrepoint, welcome to this lunchtime's Talking Point. My name's Julie Milnes, and I'm the new Director of Fundraising at the charity. I've been here for 3 months, and I have to say, in the short time that I've been here, I've been absolutely blown away by the generosity, commitment, and loyalty of you as all our supporters. So I can genuinely say that I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to say thank you so early on in my time here. And just to let you know that the difference you make to the charity is truly valued by everyone across the organisation. I'm really excited about today's talking point. I'm so glad that so many of you are joined. I think we're going to have a fantastic session. We've got a brilliant panel of speakers today talking about how we're going to be improving our services in Manchester, and particularly focusing in on our Oldham Street office and what we hope to do in the future. So first of all, you're going to hear from my brilliant colleague, Ed Tytherley, who's our Director of Housing and Services, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about homelessness in Manchester itself and Centrepoint's role in responding and what we're doing to the issue there. We're then going to hear from Lawrence Eaton, who's our Head of Property Development, who's really going to bring to life more the Oldham Street office and what that transformation looks like for the building. We're then going to hear from the brilliant Dr. Helen Wells, who's our clinical consultant psychologist and lead of psychologically informed environments, just so you understand how that's really informed the build. And finally, to wrap us up on a high, we're going to hear from Deanne Donald, who's our Senior Homes Activity Officer, just to kind of share with you a little bit about how young people currently feel about the Oldham Street office and what we hope to mean for them in the future and how they can have a better experience there. For those of you that have joined before, the session is going to run a little bit differently today in that we're going to take 45 minutes, and so we'll be finishing at 1:15. And I think that's really just because we've got so much great stuff we want to talk to you through about with Manchester and really allow it the time it deserves, as well as make sure we've got time for all your questions. We really would love to hear from you and your thoughts and comments and reflections. And so if you're interested in submitting questions, could you please use the Q&A box? I'm sure those of you who've been on Zoom calls before, you'll be familiar with this. But for those of you who aren't, and your laptop, it's at the bottom of your screen, but at your phones, it'll be at the top of your screens. So I think let's kind of get right into the content. So I'd like to hand over to Ed.
Hello, everyone. My name's Ed Tytherley. I'm the Director of Support and Housing at Centrepoint, which means I'm responsible for our housing and welfare operations around the country. It's been a great challenge, or a greater challenge than normal because of the recent COVID crisis, but I'm delighted to report that we are getting through it. And I'm very proud to represent and work alongside such a committed group of staff who've worked every single day through this pandemic, coming into services and keeping young people safe and secure, when they also had to look after themselves and their families. We've been impacted all over the place and we've had to adapt in ways none of us would have predicted, but we've kept every single service going for every young person every single day since the pandemic started, something that we're all very proud of. I'll come to why this has been such a particular challenge in Manchester in a moment, but I'll step back a little and give some context as to why Manchester is so important to Centrepoint and the wider youth homelessness sector first. Most of you will know, I suspect, that Centrepoint was founded in the 1960s in Soho as a response to the growing number of young people found on the streets of London at the time. That core mission of what we do has not changed, and we remain the leading youth homeless charity in the country, not only in terms of the fact that we now deliver services in 15 London boroughs, as well as across South and West Yorkshire, in the North East and the North West, but also our coordinating role, supporting other youth homelessness organisations, as well as our national helpline, our policy work and our media and campaigning too. But our regional focus is changing, and we are now making a long-term commitment to deliver homeless services in Manchester, irrespective of government funding and commissioning. And the simple reason for that is need. Last year, we worked with nearly 1,200 homeless young people aged 18 to 25 in Manchester. And the year before that, the figure was just shy of 1,350. And we're still receiving around 80 new cases per month of young people who've got nowhere to go and rely on us to source accommodation in a city where there simply isn't enough supported or social housing to go round. On a personal note, I find this very sad because I used to work with rough sleepers in Manchester back in the 90s. And we know that rough sleeping went down considerably in the years after, but sadly it's now back up to those same levels. As I walk through Piccadilly Gardens in recent months, I find it really difficult. that the faces and the accents and the issues and sadly even the fashion sense amongst the population living on the streets doesn't seem to have changed at all in the last 20 years. I stress that these high levels of homelessness are quite exceptional, and the impact of experiencing homelessness and that profound sense of social exclusion at such a young age is hugely damaging for young people setting out with aspirations of a successful and rewarding adult life. Which is why for Centrepoint, it can never be just a bed. It has to be a bed coupled with opportunity as well. This opportunity might be the ability to access work and traineeships, or develop life skills, to access training, to develop confidence, to maintain good physical and mental health, or more often than not, a combination of all these issues. And my colleague Helen will talk a little about the psychological impact of homelessness at such a young age later in this session. Centrepoint became aware of these high numbers of young homeless people in Manchester in the middle of the last decade. And in 2017, we entered into a strategic partnership with a charity called YPSF. We hadn't worked in the city before then, but YPSF had a proud history running outreach services for homeless young people for over 20 years, as well as running a project in the centre of town called the City Centre Project, which was the sole homeless support service for young people in the city. And it's based on Oldham Street, close to Piccadilly Gardens. And the reason we got involved in 2017 was simply because Manchester City Council cut the funding to that city centre project, and we didn't want to see all of that hard work go to waste with so many homeless young people. And so this is where Centrepoint stepped in. So not only did we then keep the drop-in project open, but the year after, in 2018, we agreed to take on all of YPSF's youth homelessness work in Manchester, which included taking on the council's own duties for young people, which I hope shows the level of regard with which Manchester City Council holds Centrepoint. And while we're doing excellent work in the city, if you come to today, it is far from straightforward. We run the council's young person services still, but we subsidise this to a tune of £100,000 every year just to meet our obligations. We also operate 2 rough sleeper outreach posts, which work with around 80 young rough sleepers every year. And on top of this, Centrepoint adds enormous value to this work. We provide a team of 3 mental health workers just to work with homeless people in the city. And we also offer 2 psychotherapists. And my colleague Dee will come in a minute and talk about her work, which is supporting young people to gain confidence and skills and steps towards employment. And on top of that, Centrepoint brings more to the party. We also deliver free legal advice. We deliver work and learning services, food poverty work, and much more. So we are doing a lot, but it's still not enough to house and support every single young homeless person away from the streets in Manchester. And that still has got to be the aim. In the last few years, we've closed around 350 cases a year on average, which means that the young person's either moved on into independent accommodation or back in with family, or whatever the long-term solution that works for them. So this is a lot of lives transformed. We're very proud, but of course we'd like to offer this to every single young person who comes to us. And the work we do day to day, it isn't easy. I mentioned coronavirus and the fact that we've stayed open throughout the last year, but this means that we've asked a huge amount of our staff, because while they are all key workers, they've been heavily exposed, and you can't create a bubble when you're asking colleagues to go out onto the streets to interact with rough sleepers or provide homeless services to young people in crisis when they've just got nowhere else to go. But we have managed to carry on through this pandemic in Manchester, and sadly referrals this year have not gone down either, so the work has continued. Furthermore, we're also seeing that the levels of support needs that our young people face are going up as well. Just over 50% of the young people we work with have got a diagnosed mental health issue. 25% approximately have got substance misuse issues, and over 10% have got anger and behavioural issues as well. So it's a real challenge providing lasting solutions for some really vulnerable young people, especially as there is an ever-shrinking pot of housing in the Manchester area as well. But we are trying to rise to the challenge. I'm very pleased to report that Centrepoint is just signing off our current 5-year strategy, and we're making a commitment to 2 areas of the country where we will continue to deliver services, whatever. And the first is London, but the second one is Manchester. We are making this long-term commitment to deliver services in the city. There are some key decisions we'll have to make in the future, and that's going to be a challenge because there is a recession brewing for the charity sector, noting that there's a lag often in the impact of a recession on charities as government and funders review their commissioning purposes and their spending commitments over time. But we make an absolute commitment to keep delivering RUS-EPA services in Manchester, and we hope we can maintain the subsidy we offer to deliver the council's own youth homeless services as well. But this point highlights the importance of fundraising and the support we get from our very generous donors. We're also trying our best to resolve the accommodation challenge that we face too. We've recently extended our rent deposit service for young people to cover Manchester as well as other cities in the country. But that's a real challenge because rents in Manchester are so high and private landlords can get considerably more income if they're renting to young professionals, which there's not enough even of that accommodation to go around in the city. Also in this new strategy, we're rolling out our new independent living programme. Independent living is a low rent product for young people to move into permanent accommodation, and that's those who are ready for work, if you like, the last piece of the jigsaw for many young people. We already offer 31 of these independent living units in Manchester, and we have an 18-month target to deliver a further 40, bring it to 71 such tenancies in the city. And the final thing I want to share in our future plans, and this could well be the jewel in the crown for Centrepoint, and that is our makeover of that original Oldham Street site that I talked about, the drop-in. So I'm about to hand over to Lawrence because he's going to talk us through the plans for this project. It's a £1.4 million makeover, and it should be open very soon. But I'm now going to hand over to Lawrence because he will talk through the Oldham Street project.
Thank you, Ed. Eloquently put. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Lawrence Eaton. I'm Head of Property Development of Centrepoint. Having joined in the middle of the lockdown last year, it's been a very strange period of time in which to try and design a new building located some considerable distance away from myself. However, it's been a pleasure actually dealing with this building. It's been a pleasure dealing with the people, and very much an honour to be involved in delivering not just an office refurbishment, which a number of people think it might be. It's actually a lot more than an office refurbishment. It's actually our principal service delivery building in the centre of Manchester. It's our principal touch point for young people to get involved with Centrepoint. I believe we have somewhere around about 1,700 young people that we were dealing with and dealt with through this building last year. That's an awful lot of young people that need our help, need our assistance. This building, when it's developed and when it's finished, I think will not only be an exemplary example of Centrepoint operating in the centre of Manchester, but we're welcoming, inviting environment for young people to come and get help and assistance whenever they need it. Moving through to the existing building, you probably, if you're not aware, the existing building, it's pretty old, it's decrepit, it's a failure of its time, basically. It's unloved and unwelcoming. The reception area is not exactly a place where you'd want to linger. It's not a very safe area for staff. The building is gloomy, it's depressing. It's not fit for purpose for a modern 21st century charity in dealing with young people and their issues and actually being able to do it right. And on top of that, staff spaces are cramped, many areas are unusable. We've got issues with holes in the walls, ceilings, roof. The building itself is in dire need of a lot more than a makeover. It's quite a comprehensive refurbishment program we've got for it. And as I said earlier, it's not just an office building, it's a building that will interact with young people in a big way. It's an exciting development. I think once you see what we're proposing for it, I think you'll be very pleased to see what's going to happen. We start with the entrance. As you know, at the moment, it's a gloomy, rather depressing area to go to. It's not safe. Staff and young people interact through the same entrance area. The reception itself isn't particularly well designed. It's poorly laid out. It's not as safe. Furniture isn't the right for it. The new building in the future. Our new reception area will be bright, it will be breezy, it'll be welcoming, it'll invite people in. The facade of the building will be changed. There'll be two separate entrances, one for young people to access the reception directly, one for our staff to access the building in a safer way as well. It'll have key fob access so that there is a security system throughout the building, so that only the people that should be there can access the areas that they work in or need to be in. You want to move on, Ben? As we said earlier, the reception as it is today, it will be totally transformed. It'll be much more welcoming. It'll be much more safer. New reception desk with a better outlook, and much more welcoming for young people to come in off the street and feel that they're actually walking into an environment that can deal with them in a safer, more proactive manner, and that their needs are being looked at and dealt with by people who actually we know care, but the building itself reflects that commitment and that passion that our staff have. Part of the area, well, some of the areas we're refurbishing, we have a basement area at the moment, which is very poor, it's damp, it's very no air conditioning, there's no air transfer systems down there, and yet it's expected to do a lot of work for young people. Laundry, storage of goods and materials, staff records, everything is put down there. It's actually very, very poor condition. So part of this program will be to bring the basement area up to a more usable condition, providing an air transfer system in there, new washing machines, new laundry area, new storage, and environmentally some bike storage for our own staff down there as well, so they can actually securely come to work on their bicycles and lock them away and know that it'll still be there at the end of their shift. The ground floor is going to be totally remodeled. There's a new interview rooms. The new interview rooms, 2 of them will be much brighter. Located towards the front of the building so that there's direct access off the reception area, so that people don't have to access through the offices to get to them. And obviously there's more security being built into them, both for young people there and for our own staff working there, secure routes in and out of the rooms, and a much more welcoming environment for people to be in. I think young people will interact a lot better. The drop-in area as it stands at the moment, again on the ground floor, very poor condition, not exactly conducive to people coming in to use. The new areas proposed will be much brighter, will be much colourful. And Helen Wells, who will be speaking later with a pie hat on, will be actually telling you about how a pie-influenced area will improve the ambience use of that area by 100%. Additional facilities, excuse me, additional facilities will be improved. There'll be new showers, there'll be new areas for people to interact in. And in general terms, the whole building will be refreshed and revamped. New LED lighting throughout, so it'll be much brighter, new flooring, new wall coverings. The floors themselves are being extended above to give extra floor area. And it will become a much more useful area. Just whilst we're on the ground floor as well, there's a commercial kitchen that's currently there. That the kitchen will be totally renewed so that the young people can actually use that, and it can be used as a catering facility as well. Our first floor area is obviously offices. First and second floor are offices, but we're not forgetting our staff. They're not being left behind. We are going to refurbish those areas completely, make them much more usable, much brighter, socially acceptable areas for people to actually work within. New windows and cladding we put on. We're extending the first floor where the balcony is out, so we actually get some more usable area of the building. And the whole area will be totally renewed. New ceilings, floors, walls. As you can see from the slides, it's a transformation rather than just a refurbishment. It is a reuse of that building that will stand there now for the next 40 years once this project's completed. As I said earlier, it's our principal outlet in the centre of Manchester, and it should reflect Centrepoint's commitment to Manchester. Lastly, not least, the rooftop, as it currently stands at the moment. A few chairs laid around on the roof. The plan is to bring the roof area into use as an outdoor office. It will be accessed by our staff principally, but they will be able to take young people up there to interact with them in a pleasant environment. There will be security access to it, so that nobody can get up there unless they have a key fob and they're actually allowed to be there. But it can be a usable space. I guess the only downside is in achieving the planning consent for the building. The local authority said that we can't have loud music up there, so we won't be able to host parties. But it's a breakout space where you can, on a nice day, if you very rarely get them in Manchester, but when you can, go up there and have a coffee and just interact with the environment and realise what a nice building you will have. Now pass on to Helen Wells, Dr. Helen Wells, I apologise. Helen, thanks very much.
Thanks. Thank you, Lawrence. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Helen Wells. I'm a consultant clinical and forensic psychologist, and I have the pleasure of being the Centrepoint lead for Psychologically Informed Environments, or PI. And I've been with the organisation for nearly 2 years now. So what is a pie, other than something you fill with meat and 2 veg? A pie is a psychologically informed environment approach. And it's been around in the homeless sector now over the past decade. And it's really a way of applying our latest thinking, our latest psychologically evidence-based practice to improving the outcomes for staff and young people who work in the homeless sector. And it really focuses on creating a safe and secure place for homeless young people to come to and for staff to work in. And this is important because of the huge evidence for the psychological or wellbeing impact of homelessness on those that experience it, including the impact on trust, relationships, as well as alluded earlier from Ed on mental health. In a pie, it's the psychological well-being of the homeless young person, as well as the staff that work with them, that's key. And it involves offering training and support to staff, reflective practice, as well as a consideration of the physical environment. It's making a hostel a home, or in the case of Oldham Street, it's making our service a homely and safe place to be. Specifically, within the context of a major renovation project like Oldham Street, this includes ensuring that the design of our spaces consider things like noise and acoustics. We want young people to be able to feel safe to come and have confidential conversations, particularly when they might be distressed. We want the layout and the light in the space to feel welcoming, positive. And we want the open spaces there where possible to connect to nature, such as the roof terrace, as Lawrence has alluded to, although granted, of course, in Manchester, that may be mainly rain. But also the interior decoration around the building. We want to think carefully about how we choose the art, the colours, the material, the furniture. And we want that to be utilised in order to reflect the young people who are accessing the building. So it feels like their space and somewhere they can attend and engage in. But the space also needs to be durable, functional and secure, but just not clinical. And we want to send a message that these spaces, for those that attend or work in them, that it sends that message to them that they are of value, that they are important, that they are of worth. But most importantly in a pie is to co-produce the space with the staff and young people that are using it. And this process is known to increase engagement from young people and also improve staff retention if they're involved. But also we know that our physical environment, as perhaps we can all appreciate during the current lockdown, has a significant impact on our psychological well-being and our mental health. So it's important to work with those that use the space to ensure that the outcome reflects their needs. So we have been working a lot with staff throughout this process, looking at their feedback on the plans and the layout. And most recently, we've been working with the young people who access the Centrepoint Manchester services. So therefore, I have great pleasure to introduce Dee, our engagement officer, who's going to outline the co-production work that we have been doing and had a workshop, in fact, just yesterday on. So I'll hand to Dee. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks Helen. So my name's Dee, I'm the Senior Activities Officer and I'm based up in Manchester. My role is primarily based around engaging young people in really inspiring and exciting activities that essentially springboard them into the next sort of phase of their lives, ensuring that they're equipped with the kind of interpersonal skills and confidence that they need to really prosper and grow, not just with Centrepoint, but beyond. And so essentially my role within the Oldham Street redevelopment project is to engage young people in the decision-making process, specifically around the interior design of the building. As Helen just talked about before, we're really strong on using a co-produced model to ensure that we really create a space in a building that reflects the needs and interests of every young person that engages with Centrepoint. So we started working with young people or engaging them in this process back in August during, as we are still now in coronavirus central situation. Essentially, it's provided a lot of challenges for us. I mean, we have done an amazing job at getting young people involved, but as Ed sort of picked up on before or mentioned before, a lot of our young people are rough sleepers. So we rely essentially on that kind of face-to-face interaction to make sure that we're supporting them well throughout their kind of journey with Centrepoint. Obviously with COVID, that face-to-face interaction either has sort of disappeared completely or been greatly reduced, which means that what should be a really inclusive opportunity to be a decision maker has become quite exclusive. That said, we are working with key workers to ensure that young people can still be involved in this process. However, the model we've got at the moment isn't the most effective or efficient way to do that, but we are looking at ways that we can kind of build on that. In terms of kind of getting young people involved, like many other organisations, we are quite reliant on digital resource. However, again, because a lot of our young people are street homeless, we can't ensure that a lot of our young people can engage in that particular way. That said, as Helen mentioned, we had our very first session yesterday, our online remote session with interior designer Daniela Bird from Space Positive. I felt really privileged to be in that session and participate. It was so inspiring, it was really insightful, and it was just a brilliant way to kind of kick off what is going to be an amazing way to encourage young people to get involved with the design of the building. Daniela did a really brilliant job of drawing out a really honest view of the building and what young people's thoughts and feelings around it currently are. As Lawrence sort of picked up on before, it's not a great space. It's not somewhere that you really want to spend your time. And the feedback was generally quite negative. That aside, however, one of the really kind of brilliant gems that came out of it was that the young people keep coming back to Centrepoint because of the staff. The staff make the space, the staff ensure that young people are supported in their journey and are equipped with the things that they need to move on. So an absolute credit to the staff at Centrepoint and the work that they do. It's outstanding. In terms of kind of general points that came back, there were some really brilliant ideas, and if I was going to run through all of them, we'd be here till next week. However, one of the things that the young people really picked up on was that they want the space to be versatile. They understand that each young person that uses Centrepoint and relies on Centrepoint is so very different. So on any given day, the building really has to suit, again, the needs and interests of every young person. On top of that, I guess Lawrence talked about it before, the Rooftop Garden, it sort of stuck with me. Again, it rains in Manchester all the time. It's currently raining and it was snowing yesterday. However, that aside, the young people are really interested to use that space, not just as somewhere to kind of meet with a key worker, but as a working space. So there was this idea that we perhaps could have a space where they could grow vegetables in the hope that they could then harvest them, take them down to the kitchen, cook them and eat them. So it kind of gives this impression of young people having a really holistic view of how they want Centrepoint to kind of feature in their lives and what it means to them. It's not just about having wonderful paintings on the wall and, a warm, safe space, but it's really contributing to a kind of holistic approach to their well-being overall. Moving forwards, we're really looking to get some more sessions with Daniela Bird, so generating even more ideas and building on what the young people came up with yesterday. And some kind of future aspirations, and hopefully they'll become reality, is to work with Manchester-based artists so that we can create workshops where young people not only are making the decisions about what the building looks like, but are kind of getting involved with the practical side. So there's this idea that we will work with a graffiti artist to map the journey of a young person in their kind of start at Centrepoint right the way through till the end of their journey with Centrepoint. And if we can get young people not only deciding what that looks like, but ensuring they get a paintbrush or a spray paint or whatever material it is that they use to put that on the walls, it really kind of encompasses, again, that kind of co-production model that we're really embedding into this project. Just to kind of leave you with a thought, yesterday in the session, one of the young people, we were talking about lots of things, they came up with this idea of transcending barriers, and it really, really stuck with me. And I just thought, if the Centrepoint building can be a building where young people are allowed and able to transcend barriers, then we're halfway there to doing not a good job, but an outstanding job. So I'm just going to leave you with that, and I'm going to pass back to Julie Mills.
Brilliant. Just thank you to all our panelists. I mean, I don't know about you, but as I've been listening to that, I've been so inspired and kind of motivated. I think just the pictures of the transformation bringing it to life is absolutely fantastic, and just everything that Deanne was talking through there in terms of the feedback for the session. I agree, the idea of transcending barriers is an amazing ambition and one we should all aspire to. We've now got time for questions, so if I can invite all my panelists to put their microphones and their cameras back on, and what we'd love to hear from you is for you to type your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen if you're on your laptop, and at the top of your screen if you're on your phone. I can see George has been ahead of the game already and already submitted a question, so I'm going to kick off with George's question. So George has asked, you mentioned the potential a recession on the horizon. How are you planning to deal with the effects of this from a financial perspective, given the likelihood of income decreasing while the demand on your services may well be increasing? Ed, do you want to kind of make a comment first of all on that, and then perhaps hand over to someone else?
Yeah, Julie, I think you're part of the solution in that one, so you might follow up. Centrepoint goes into the recession relatively financially robust. So I guess there's many other charities out there who will be more vulnerable than us in this particular time period, but that's not to say it's straightforward, because we've made certain commitments in spending that will be very hard to maintain in the coming years. So it's going to be a really challenging environment for us. One thing I mentioned in my presentation is that recessions normally hit charities as a bit of a lag. Certainly, having worked through, I'm getting old now, so this is my third recession. I think I've learned this over time. The corporate sector often enters recession very, very quickly. They're often more fleet of foot and they're affected more quickly. Then often the statutory sector gets affected because of tax reductions, and obviously they've got spending commitments. Often the charity sector, I think, has a lag. Certainly, I'm thinking back to the banking crisis of the last recession, often 2, if not 3 years, when everyone thinks, oh, the recession, we're coming out of it. Actually, that's often the peak recession time for a charity. So absolutely, we're doing all our financial scenario planning. We've done some pretty disastrous ones. We've done some conservative ones, and we've done some optimistic ones. Of course, the old adage about hope for the best, but prepare for the worst is true. So absolutely, we've scenario planned different places. I think fundraising is absolutely vital for Centrepoint to keep maintaining the services we do. And I would, a lot of the bit that, so Julie kind of does the income piece in terms of fundraising, which is so crucial at Centrepoint. I do more of the contractual stuff with local authorities. And our anticipation is that that money will probably go down in the coming years. So we are bracing ourselves for that and looking at ways that either we can grow income in other sources, or indeed being pragmatic and looking at ways that we can reduce similar service on reduced budgets and stuff. So there are multiple ways of going on. It's good common sense financial practice, and I hope that gives the answer you're looking for.
Thank you, Ed. And you're right. I guess just where I can build is from a financial fundraising perspective, you know, we have also been doing that kind of scenario planning on the recognition that we are in a recession and that perhaps people won't be able to support us at the same levels. We have got a fantastic supporter base, and you are absolutely amongst them. And as I said, it's looking about how we can diversify and continue to support people. And I just really continue to tell that story about the need that is so crucial to help our young people who are really, really mostly impacted by the recession of all of us. I'd like to move on to the next question from Jan. So Andy Burnham actively supports the activities of certain property developers who are known to be resistant to the idea of buildings providing for the needs of the homeless being allowed within developing areas like the Northern Quarter. How sure are you of getting his support from this project? And do you think there will be resistance to resistance to the project from any of these developers? Lawrence, are you maybe best to speak to that in terms of your property development?
Well, we've not experienced any resistance. We've certainly we achieved a planning consent. The planners were, at the end of the day, wholeheartedly, Manchester City Council were wholeheartedly behind the development. So therefore, I think people it's down to the quality of what the product is. Centrepoint are proposing a quality product. I don't think anyone could complain about that being on your doorstep. So therefore, that's probably the reason why we never received any complaints about it.
Brilliant. Thank you,
Julie,
Laura.
I'm just going to chip in. Andy Burnham has personally endorsed the work that we're doing in Manchester, and there's a brochure around the city centre project which has a quote from Andy Burnham in. So he's on board. I think the issue we're talking about is much more structural. It's about planning and about Section 106s and things like that, which is a real issue. Only this morning, I was reading an article about how it's envisaged that property prices in Manchester will increase faster than the rest of the country. So I agree, there is a challenge there. There's not enough accommodation for those who can afford it in Manchester, despite those who can't. So all the good stuff that Centrepoint's doing actually is in the greater context that we're swimming against the tide of accommodation, and actually there is a dwindling pot relative to need of supported and social housing in Manchester. We're trying to address it but Centrepoint's not a big enough player that we can redress all of it. But the independent living product I talked about is one way that we're trying to address that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ed. Moving on to the next question. Catherine's asked, how much is targeted for the building refurbishment? Lawrence, I think you quoted that figure in your bit of the presentation.
Yeah, currently it's 1.4 million. That's 1.4 million inclusive of fees, VAT, and all of the ancillary costs that make up. That's not just the build cost. So there's quite a lot of on costs that you have to bring with it.
Thank you. There's next couple of questions I'm actually going to pair together. So the questions are, how much are local businesses assisting or sponsoring, and are there any corporate sponsors to date? Again, Lawrence, I might hand over to you, and then Ben, I know you're on the line, so I don't know if you want to have a quick chip in. Lawrence, can I hand over to you first? Are you aware of any local businesses or assisting or sponsoring so far?
Well, all of the design team are local firms or firms with a local presence in Manchester. That was part of a conscious decision, so that we really use firms that are based in Manchester and know the environment and the area. We have tendered the job. We have recently tendered to commit out to the commercial market, and all of those contractors that we tendered it to were local Manchester contractors as well. So we are trying to keep it as a Manchester scheme rather than opening up to a wider area. Ben's probably better, more of an expert on the sort of fundraising side and what he's doing there. But from a commercial aspect on the building side, then obviously it makes sense environmentally as well if we can use local firms rather than have to go vast distances to have people transported across the country. So yeah, it is or trying to be a local building project.
I'm very happy to add a little bit further information to that as well. So my name is Ben Bowden. I'm the Senior Regional Fundraising Manager for Centrepoint. We've actually had some fantastic support already. We've had support from some of our kind of long-term corporate sponsors, such as the Cooperative Bank. The Cooperative Bank have made pledges to actually support the build throughout the work and the partnership that they've been doing with us. We've had some really good contributions towards the project from significant capital funders, such as the Garfield Weston Foundation and the Wolfson Foundation. And we've just started really at this point going public with actually the support and the additional support that we need. And we've already started getting some inquiries coming in from different organisations. We will be going to a public appeal and a more kind of open public appeal for the project, of which we expect and really hope and want the backing of the community and local corporates to actually support us. So if you do know any, and if you are one, please do let us know, because we would very much welcome it. But so far the support has been fantastic. We've still got a way to go, and we really hope that actually with a project of this kind of scale, significance and benefit for both the kind of the aspirations of young people in the city, that actually will be something that local companies who've got a vested interest in young people will help to support with.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ben. I'm just going to jump to Alan's questions, because I think for me, I personally found sort of Deanne's final comment really interesting. So Alan's asked, when you mention transcending barriers, what are these barriers? Or what do the young people you help see as barriers, and barriers to what? Clearly, it's more than just homelessness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from kind of what was generated in conversation yesterday, the idea that a lot of spaces in Manchester aren't accessible or inviting for young people. So where there might be opportunities that they can access, they're not necessarily sort of invited or feel comfortable going into kind of experience those. So if we can bring in, say for example, a photography workshop to Centrepoint, where young people feel comfortable in the building, they know the space, they've got that sense of ownership, they feel empowered to participate, then that's one step forwards to encouraging them perhaps next time to go and do a photography course at an external organisation, for example. In terms of kind of our young people, they generally do come to Centrepoint with a lot of personal barriers, so they will experience really kind of challenging situations. They will have quite negative opinions of themselves, and so to be able to overcome those in order that they can succeed is kind of one way that we can transcend barriers or support young people to do that.
And I think I'd just like to add on there the sort of barriers of just accessing other services. So, we have a fantastic health team in Manchester, because one of the barriers for many of our homeless young people is the ability to access the standard statutory care pathways, the standard sort of NHS services that require you to have residency and turn up for appointments and so on and so forth. So we can offer something different for the young people that don't place those additional demands on them to ensure that they can get the access to the help that they need when they need it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Helen and Deanne. I'm just going to loop back to the appeal ban. We've got a question from Valerie about, have we raised all the money we need for the project? And if not, how much do we need? And again, just want to touch on if we have got any support from local property developers who are prospering in Manchester.
Yep, sorry, just unmuting myself as ever. We have to date raised about £450,000 towards the progress of the project, and Centrepoint is committing a certain amount of our reserves, which, as you know, all charities are under a lot of financial pressure at the moment, but we have committed to ensure that we can make the project happen. But we really, really do need to actually fundraise to actually be able to make this the project that we really want it to be a space that is a fantastic high quality space for young people, and not be forced to kind of pull back too much in terms of the scope of what we can achieve to deliver that impact. So that kind of gives you a little picture of where we are. We've still got a long way to go, and like I say, we hope that the appeal will do a really good job of basically raising the profile of what Centrepoint wants to do in the city, because the building is important. The building is really important as kind of the hub, as the contact point of where young people come in to see us. But it is actually the work that happens in the building that is the most important thing. And we want actually this appeal to make people a bit more aware of such a difficult job of what our staff do in transforming young people's lives. So it's actually, by taking it public, we really hope that people will understand a little bit more about kind of the work that we do, and kind of what such a significant and important kind of entry point this is, but that the exit is actually more important. So in terms of kind of where we're now going with it, we have had discussions with a number of supporters, and we hope that actually when we kind of take this to the public appeal, that we will get support from property developers and from a number of companies that are in the kind of the area where they do have a social obligation to actually help in Manchester to make sure that it is fair for everybody and that there is opportunity for everybody. So we have, I hope that kind of answers your question. We've got a certain amount in so far. Like I say, fantastic that we've raised 450,000 so far, but we've got a long way to go to actually reach up to this 1.4 million that we want to get to.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ben. I am conscious that we're kind of coming up to 1:15. So what I'd like to do is just take one more question, but just so everyone is aware, what we'll do is those questions that we haven't answered, we'll circulate the answers to afterwards to all the participants. So if we haven't had a chance to get to your question within the time frame, then don't worry, we will still provide an answer and share it so everyone can see it. But I think actually the point that I'd just like to come back to, I think one of the questions that I think is just maybe just a really interesting practical one to end on is from Justine. So how will you provide support to young people while the work is ongoing at the site? Will you need to move to a different location, and how will you manage that support to ensure that they are still confident to access support? I don't know who's best placed to take that. Ed, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, happily. So we are renting an office in a place called Parsonage Gardens, which is slightly further out of the centre, but still very accessible. So we're carrying it on. It doesn't have the drop-in. It doesn't have all the facilities that Oldham Street will have, or indeed had before. And it's a first floor office, so actually a lot of our interactions, we have to manage them coming up the stairs, and then we have a reception space, etc. So it's not optimal. So it is an interim solution that we're offering. But all the things that we talked about, we are still offering. So for instance, we have psychotherapy and we have mental health advice, and we've rented another very small office literally on Piccadilly Gardens for those who know Manchester. So we have a very quiet and safe place to deliver mental health services. But the main assessment and all the follow-up work to the rough sleepers and all the homeless advice is delivered in this interim office in Parsonage Gardens. It's not optimal. It does not offer what Oldham Street will by any stretch, but it means we continue to deliver all our services entirely in the city.
And I think that's something absolutely that we're kind of really keen to commit to, and just stays with that. As Ed said, you know, we've been in Manchester the entire time and through lockdown, that we want to kind of honour that and make sure those young people get that vital support that we need. So I'm going to start to wrap up, but again, just on the reassurance that if we didn't get a chance to answer your questions, then we will do, and we'll send them around to participants. But I think just for me, it shows how just how interested everyone's finding it, and just, you know, how keen there is to find out more. So please, if you do have additional questions, then do feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. So all that's left to me is just say thank you to our brilliant speakers. Thank you to Helen, to Deanne, to Lawrence, Ed, and to Ben for jumping on last minute. And we just really appreciate your insight. I think you've been really inspirational and kind of really insightful in sharing what's going to be happening in Manchester and just the difference that we make, and hopefully everyone's kind of really understands the vision. But also just thank you to you as participants, and thank you to you for joining us. We really appreciate that you've taken time out of your lunch hour to listen to us, and just for all the continued support. Thank you for everything that you have done and everything that you will do. I really can say it's truly valued. I think finally, just if you've got any feedback, we would really love to hear it. We're keen to make these sessions as valuable as possible when you are joining us and giving up your lunch hour. All that's left for me to say is thank you very much, and have a great rest of the week. And please do make sure you stay safe and well. Goodbye.